Samantha, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you see me?
I cannot, but I can hear you.
Okay, I don't know why there's no video button here for me to click on. I've used WebEx before, like in some of my master's degree classes, but I don't. This is a different format. It doesn't have a video button for me. So, okay. Well, at least you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisors, we're now live on YouTube streaming. It is working well. I just want to remind all callers that are calling in, please mute your own personal devices.
I don't think anybody's hearing me. So does the county have a YouTube channel?
No, no, we don't have our very own channel.
But we're on YouTube.
Yes, Samantha can explain that.
Well, we do have a channel. However, it's not been used in a long time, like 4 years. We've rediscovered it and use it for this purpose now.
I can't hear you, Samantha.
Can you hear me now?
Samantha?
Anyone else able to hear me?
Ray, turn up your hearing aid.
Answer, this is Kathy. I hear you.
Yeah, thank you.
Turn up your volume, Ray.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello? Hello?
Hello, I can't hear you.
I didn't know if anybody could hear me.
Oh, we can.
Okay, cool. I'm in the right place to give a statement for tonight, right?
Who is speaking?
Annie Jackson?
Samantha?
That would be with County Clerk Loomis, and as long as you submitted your information to myself, Samantha Kragenbrink, or the Survey Monkey, you are in the correct place.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I'll mute then.
Thanks. You're welcome.
I'm on the call as well, and I sent in my information as well.
Okay, thank you.
The clerk has shared all those statements with us already.
Could you repeat that?
The county clerk has received all of the comments, all of the written comments submitted, and has passed them on to the county board members. We have a way of incorporating the public comment. We have approximately 35 persons wishing to speak, so we're going to have to find a way to do that efficiently. We won't necessarily call it each person.
I'm waiting. My name's Julie Court.
Did you submit yours written as well, Julie?
I submitted everything that I on your link.
Okay, then we got it. That's good.
No. But I'm wanting to give public input according to state law.
Sure.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you.
And my name is Joshua Andrew. I'm on the line as well as a citizen. I submitted 2 documents to the county already in writing, but I also have a statement I'd like to read tonight that I have not submitted and would like the opportunity to do so as well.
What I'm trying to say is everyone who indicated a comment may not be able to deliver it verbally. We do have all the written comments. We're trying to find a way to do this efficiently. If we try to do 3 minutes with everyone, the comments would take an hour and a half, and we won't be doing that. We're going to limit it to a half hour. I would remind you that many of the comments have to do with the health ordinance. The health ordinance comes to us for first reading tonight, second reading on the 20th, and there's an opportunity then for the comment. Also,
what would be the harm to allow as many people who want to comment on this health ordinance, even if it meant multiple hours of comments? I think as representatives of the citizens of Eau Claire, you need to hear and why this isn't in a better format that is easier to let our voices be heard is a disgrace.
Now we just put our name.
Chair Smyer,
yes, sir.
can you remind people to mute? I'm getting all kinds of background
I
noise.
had to.
Same here.
I want to indicate that public comment, that section is a decision we made as a board a few years ago. It's not a matter of state law. It's a matter of our county code. And the county code does have a limit, 30 minutes, 3 minutes for each person, and it's at the discretion of the chair. So to answer the earlier comment, we will not be taking all the verbal comment. And that is because that would impede our ability to do our ordinary business. However, if you wish, you could also make comment on the 20th when the health ordinance comes up for a vote at second reading.
Well, this is, yeah, you've got a very difficult.
I would like to request that you set up a special session with the public to give all of their input and not limit the public voice to 30 minutes.
I've noted your request.
Thank you.
That decision ultimately would be up to the board.
I don't like your venue. This is difficult to get on. You're trying to eliminate input is what you're trying to do.
No, sir, we're not. Trying to do it efficiently.
If the website is difficult, you can also use the phone. This is Supervisor Schneider, and that's what I do if the website is giving you a problem.
Well, I went with WebEx. I registered in. I didn't even see a spot on the monkey thing, monkey survey that make comments, or I would have.
You need to step up. You start getting on the city board. Start getting on the county board. Start making a difference because if we do,
who's shouting?
Chair Smyer, we need to remind everybody that's calling to use your devices, or I will have to mute everyone.
Are you going to allow comment from people who have stayed muted?
I'll explain the comment when we come on, which is at about 1 minute. what we're trying to do is do it efficiently. Clerk Loomis and I and others have talked about how to do this to represent the public opinion, but it will not be possible for every single person to take 3 minutes. And that's a function of our public comment. So that's the way it's going to be. If some disagree with that, then you disagree with it. Samantha, I'm going to ask, can you mute those lines?
Yes, I will mute everyone right now. When public comment starts, I will unmute everyone. So please mute your own devices.
Okay, thank you. It is now 7 o'clock. I call to order this regular meeting of the Eau Claire County Board of Supervisors on this Tuesday, October the 6th. Our first item will be honoring the flag. Supervisors, please unmute for this portion, and together we will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Supervisors and everyone, please mute your devices. We will now have a moment of reflection by Supervisor Beckfield.
Thank you, Chair. I know how busy it's going to be tonight, so I'll keep it under 15 minutes, I promise.
Oh, please keep it under 5.
Oh, okay. Actually, tonight, what I'd like to talk about is what our jobs are as supervisors. Our jobs is to do the business of our elected officials as elected officials, to be as transparent with our people as we can, and of course, responsible for our fiduciary responsibility. And remember that we're nonpartisan. To stick to the facts, that's why we were elected, to do the people's business and protect the taxpayers' dollars as best we can with the maximum transparency for all the people in Eau Claire County. That'll be all.
Next on our agenda is a call of the roll. Clerk Loomis, are you doing call of the roll?
Gibson,
Yeah, please.
McKinney,
Present.
Knight,
Here.
Pagonis,
Here.
Pagonis. Anton,
She's
Here.
thank you. Our Supervisor Anton,
here.
Zook,
Here.
Chilson,
Here.
Stelgis, Supervisor Stelgis, Maury,
Here.
Coffee,
Here.
Henning,
Here.
Bates, Supervisor Bates, Russell,
Here.
Gatlin,
Here.
Smyer,
Here.
Hamvick Boyle,
Here.
Neiman,
Here.
Dunning,
Here.
Wilkie,
Here.
Anderson,
Present.
Beckfield,
Here.
Schneider,
Here.
Leary. Supervisor Leary, I thought I saw you on. I'm sure she said before, can someone hear me? Did anyone remember that? No? DeLuca? I can't hear you, but I see that you're on.
Here.
Jansen?
Here.
Schroffnagel?
Here.
Roberts?
Here.
Kronk? And Christofferson.
Present.
I have 2 absent, 27 present.
Who are the 2 absent, please?
Bates and Stelgis.
Bates should be here. Sorry.
Did you say Bates?
Colleen, okay, thank you. And then Kevin Stelgis, Supervisor Stelgis, I have as absent.
Supervisor Stelgis is having some difficulty, but I'll let you know when he's on.
Okay, well, then all present will be, 29 present.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is approval of the proceedings for the 15th. We'll do motion by chat, except for Supervisor Schneider. Motion by chat. So indicate your motion by using the chat function. And Samantha, I'll ask you to let me know.
Motion by Supervisor Gatlin.
Second?
Any no second.
Do it by chat, please. I'm waiting for a chat.
Trying to find it.
It looks like the public chat has been disabled.
Second by Supervisor Jansen. If you go all the way to the top of your chat, you'll be able to click my name only to chat with me.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections? And again, please use the hand function. Raise your hand if you have any deletion, correction, or addition to the Journal of Proceedings. Anyone? Okay, we will do this one by voice vote. All those in favor, please unmute first. All those in favor of the Journal of Proceedings as distributed, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All those opposed by nay. The chair's conclusion is that this is unanimous. Thank you. Now we'll move on to public comment. Before we go into public comment, as I mentioned earlier, we have over 35 names. So in order to do this within our time frame and trying to be fair to all, I'm going to ask, we have one person who's making comment on a motion that we have tonight. That individual is making a comment on a rezoning request. We're going to call on that person first. Then we're going to go to a group, Clerk Loomis, I think will indicate that group. Is that correct, Clerk Loomis? Yes? You're muted.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then we will try to group together the persons who have similar comment to make. So we will begin first with our person with a zoning comment.
Jerry Ripley.
Is this verbal or written?
It is. There are, excuse me, 30 individuals signed up to speak and 46 individuals that have written comments. So we're doing the speaking ones first up until 25 minutes. That'll give me 5 minutes to speak on the behalf of the written ones. So Jerry Ripley.
I am going to unmute all callers. So all callers, please make sure your device is muted. Thank you, Jerry. You should be good to go.
Who did you mute? Unmute?
Yeah. Is this Jerry Ripley? Jerry Ripley?
We'll come back to him if we need to.
Karen Hurd has she will be on the screen to speak. Samantha, do you have her?
She is here appearing just by voice.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, supervisors, for listening to my comment tonight. First of all, I want to thank you for your service to our community. You put in lots of time and effort, and I'm appreciative. The proposed ordinance, as far as the the ordinance that we're talking about with the public health, as it's currently drafted, it inadvertently omits key pieces of public health. It focuses on only one discipline of knowledge as a resource, which then can lead to a decision that does not adequately address the health of the public. And the short-sightedness of relying on only one discipline of knowledge can generate a resolution that could potentially harm by the instituting of orders or policy that create more problems than it solves. I want to read to you a quote from the World Health Organization, and this is the central dogma in all public health throughout the world, throughout the United States, everywhere. This is what the World Health Organization states. Health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease. To accomplish the goal of addressing not just the presence of disease, but the complete physical, mental, and social well-being of those affected by a health issue, we have to take a systems thinking approach, and that has become the standard in regard to public health concerns across our nation. Systems thinking is a practice of team science as related to public health. It involves a transdisciplinary research and assessment. One field of discipline can't be relied upon for a thorough assessment of a public health threat, and then the ensuing recommendations made to meet that threat. To not encompass a transdisciplinary approach can result in what's called a scientific silo. It's a term used to describe compartmentalized knowledge. This unidiscipline in a scientific silo, it's useful. However, it leaves out other issues that are involved in the complete physical, mental, and social well-being that are essential in public health. When we put together a full assessment, they're called risk assessments that we do in the public health sector. And we bring in, on the very first step, all stakeholders. A stakeholder is any person or group with an interest or a stake in a risk management situation, such as COVID-19 or infectious disease. So typically, stakeholders are those affected or potentially affected by the risk managers, and the groups that would be affected. The stakeholders that should be considered for involvement with this particular ordinance should include, but not be limited to, the following: scientists, medical personnel, data verification experts, economists, mental health experts, social workers, school authorities, nursing home administrative representatives, business representatives, local interest groups, enforcement authorities, police, governmental authority in whose jurisdiction it falls, that's you, the Eau Claire County Board Supervisors, politicians, media, and legal counsel. When we bring all these stakeholders together, we can together propose an ordinance that can meet the needs of the citizens of Eau Claire County and not just rely on a scientific silo of one particular understanding. And so my recommendation to the board is that we would form a task force that would go through the standard public health risk assessment that is done across all of the plethora of public health across our country as well as the world, and to properly carry out a risk assessment. And is my time up?
Yes, it is, Karen.
Okay, I'll stop. Thank you very much. I appreciate you letting me comment.
Samantha, Jerry Ripley, is he available now?
Jerry Ripley, I believe, was having some issues, and he submitted his comment via email, which I can send to the county board members at this time, or you can read, or I can read.
I'm gonna call on the next speaker, Maggie Venipal.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. I would like to start by saying good evening and thank you for your commitment to making Eau Claire one of the best communities in the state to live in. We do appreciate your hard work in all the matters regarding Eau Claire County. This public comment represents the voices of 1,120 Eau Claire County citizens and or business owners. I would like to start tonight with the color of law. Our comments tonight do not reflect a partisan agenda. Many of us are small business owners who have been bombarded with rules, and as far as we are aware, we are following them. We are concerned that we won't be able to run businesses efficiently because of the proposed ordinance. We already have decreases in revenue and we are following guidelines given to us by our respective societies, insurance companies, government agencies, and any other regulatory bodies under our own business categories. Our comments also reflect our grave concern over the subjective nature of ordinance and deprivation of rights under the color of law. It is dangerous to give an unelected official extensive powers under the law. As elected officials making this decision, please do consider the possible consequences. Wisconsin Legislature versus Palm overturned Tony Ebert's stay-at-home order in May 2020 due to constitutional doubt. Under Section 242 of Title 18, Deprivation of Rights under the Color of Law, it makes it a crime for a person acting under the color of any law to willfully deprive a person of the right or privilege protected by the Constitution. These acts include anything done by local government officials, such as city council members, county board members, or public health officials. If you vote to pass the communicable disease ordinance, you are making any member of the city council, county board, or public health department personally responsible for any decisions under the ordinance that the public health director would make. If you took an oath to uphold our Constitution, you personally can be persecuted under the color of law. This ordinance could create constitutional doubt. There is not an exception of the constitutional rights in a pandemic situation or public health crisis. These individual rights, such as public gathering, right to assemble, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, do not go away. These individual rights, including the protections in the Bill of Rights, made applicable to the states through the 14th Amendment, are always active and restrain government action. When you vote on this ordinance, we ask you to vote no and choose to protect the rights of the citizens you have taken an oath to constitutionally represent. Thank you.
Jason Gonzalez. Jason
All right, I'm talking about COVID infection in Eau Claire. This comment represents the voices of 1,120 signatures. Local health department data reveals 3% hospitalizations per known positive case and 0.3 fatalities per. Numbers reflect the results that we've had when someone contracts the virus in our community and are based on known positive cases. The CDC stated that there could be 6 to 24 cases for every known positive case, so these numbers could be projected to be much lower. These figures, based on 7 months of data and a 2,000 case sample size, can provide an argument towards a limitation on potential worst case scenarios. These figures are not directly dependent on prevention measures, only access to health care. The per capita mortality rate for Eau Claire through the same period has been 0.00007 deaths. This has been through having lockdown, not having lockdown, wearing masks, and not wearing masks. Should we be considering the effects of each case, along with the number of cases when considering this ordinance? With these figures, have we actually been in a state of emergency in Eau Claire all this time? The health director stated that our numbers need to be 10 cases or less for us to return to normal. That criteria would keep us under the discretion of the health department for a very long time and should be reconsidered. Can a virus be controlled to that level, and what are the side effects of attempting to control cases to that level? At a time when our local COVID cases are increasing, it's occurring at the same time with increased mask usage. Orders are being proposed based on scientific evidence, but there is reason for concern regarding on how we are interpreting the science. The current model determining what is reasonable and necessary is based on the reporting of cases. Is the number of cases as critical when considering there has been less than 3% hospitalizations per case and less than 0.3 deaths per case? Many cases are asymptomatic or have minor symptoms. Impact should be valued over cases. Are the proposals in this ordinance and the current recommendations congruent with what has actually happened in Eau Claire County? Why are we considering interventional methods necessary to the Spanish flu, which was unprecedented? 1 million people died then. There are arguments about who actually died from COVID-19 and who died from complications of other comorbidities. Do we need additional means to enforce with an already good compliant record in this community? Should we mandate exercise programs and ban fast food restaurants? How many lives would we save? Especially considering that the leading causes of comorbidity causing death with COVID-19 are obesity or diabetes. Instead, we took down outdoor basketball hoops. Thank you.
Janet, you're muted.
Rebecca Zimmerman.
Thank you. This public comment represents the voices of 1,120 Eau Claire citizens and/or business owners. I'm going to be talking to you about the impact this ordinance would have on schools and children. The Eau Claire Area School District has stated that it is taking its direction on schooling from requirements by our city-county health director. Yet our health director states she is only recommending these measures. Because of confusion like this and blame shifting, you can understand why parents of students would be apprehensive and oppose this ordinance, just simply based on how it could affect schooling. Schooling is already a struggle, as we have seen presented by parents, students, and most recently at the Eau Claire Area School District meeting, student representatives. The Eau Claire Area School District is failing, but by no fault of the excellent teachers we have in our community. We do not know what could be found to be reasonable or necessary to be included in an order that would be enforceable with this ordinance. The last thing our schools, teachers, and students need is another barrier to in-person learning, activities, access to enriched classes, and athletics. Speaking specifically about our schools in Eau Claire County, we have 113 students currently quarantined. This is 113 healthy students being asked to stay home and getting less instruction based on an only advisory order. It is apparent from data easily accessible on the ECASD dashboard that the students quarantined week to week rarely even result in positive cases. We are wasting valuable in-person educational hours with quarantine. Are we setting ourselves up for this to be the new normal way to handle any virus if we make this enforceable? How much more damage will be done with enforceable orders? In state statutes, health orders, and this ordinance in particular, the phrases necessary, reasonable, and best scientific data are used frequently. We are currently under advisory health orders that have been said to have been made with the best scientific data. The CDC currently states teachers are not a high-risk demographic, children are a minimal risk for transmission, only 6% of all COVID cases are in school-age children, hospitalizations are low, and kids make up less than 0.1% of all COVID-related deaths. No child has even died in Wisconsin related to COVID-19. So although the current best scientific data actually suggests that it is safe and necessary for our children to be at school in person, even without social distancing and mask wearing, we are still following overly cautious recommendations. How can we trust the decisions when it's very clear that fear and personal bias have played a role in these decisions and orders? Even our advisory orders do not make sense compared to the best scientific data. And now you are considering making these enforceable. How do you expect parents to trust that future enforceable orders won't continue to be clouded by personal bias and fear. Many of the recommendations of the health department to the schools have been unreasonable and unnecessary and more damaging than beneficial. Making them enforceable with potential penalties for schools and students should be voted against. The parents of Eau Claire County students are asking you to please heavily consider the consequences on children and the damaging effects enforceable orders through this ordinance could have on our children in schools. Thank you.
You're muted, Janet. You're muted.
Jason Richards.
Oh, are you skipping me? Were you having me go next? This is Kayla Rick.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Kayla, you're next, and then Jason, yeah.
Thank you. This public comment represents the voice of 1,120 Eau Claire citizens and or business owners. I will be speaking to you about the impacts of this ordinance on small businesses. Please consider the impacts on the small businesses in our great community that this ordinance will have if it passes. It is clear that this ordinance was written for the purpose of enforcement. The consequences for business owners and our local economy must be considered. Small business owning families have worked diligently to follow the current orders and have intrinsic motivation to protect the health and safety of their customers and employees. Why would businesses need to be penalized? Small businesses have already lost revenue for this year, and some businesses have had to close their doors permanently. The power this ordinance would grant to the health officer could cause more business owners to lose everything they've spent their lives building. Enforcement restrictions for occupancy further strain local businesses, especially when the occupancy level is tied to an arguably unreasonable positive case rate and number of positive cases. Business owners have asked for clarification on how a business be identified as the source of community-based infection, as the ordinance states, and what would constitute a general local order in the absence of an emergency that could cause businesses to be under unknown health official orders for up to 1 year or longer if Section 8.30.050 is used to pass orders into local legislation, but those questions have not yet been answered specifically. An ordinance intended to allow for these types of long-term restrictions and penalties is not only unnecessary, but unconstitutional and setting the county and the city up for prompt litigation. The fact that this ordinance would allow for a penalty to pass into local legislation without a specific violation attached to it should be concerning to you as a public servant who has sworn to uphold the constitutional rights of your neighbors. We do not know what the future orders will be that will allow for the listed penalties. Passing this into our local legislation would be reckless and will have unintended consequences. It is essential that small business owners have the ability to create revenue and the desire to own a business in this county. We have contacted. Is somebody unmuted? We have contacted roughly 150 locally owned businesses in the last week, and 98% of them have voiced opposition to this ordinance and are counting on you to protect their rights to keep their business open. Bills do not stop when businesses are called non-essential in order to close. Adding the ability to fine on top of that can be seen as an attack on your neighbor whom you have pledged to protect. Thank you for your time and your attention to this.
You were muted, Janet. Go ahead. Janet.
Okay, this is Jason Richards. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. I don't know if you're called on by the clerk.
She said he was after the last gal.
Jason Richards.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. This public comment represents the voices of 1,120 signatures of Eau Claire citizens and our business owners, and possibly much more. I am speaking on the legal concerns of this ordinance. One of the primary concerns of this group of people speaking to you today is that this ordinance is too vague, leaving it open to the interpretation of an unelected official and allowing for potential abuse of power. If this is in our legislation, it is likely to be removed. itself to unconstitutional orders that further damage lives, mental health, education, religious freedom, local economy, and even invite lawsuits. This ordinance, as stated in the recent Wisconsin legislature versus Palm making laws because they have faith that the procedural hurdles required to pass legislation limit the ability of the legislature to infringe on their rights. This ordinance only requires the data that is considered is that of a communicable disease, but neglects to consider any other data that may show harm or failure in another area of the county not directly tied to a communicable disease. Officer being able to do what is reasonable and necessary based on health department data certainly creates bias and elevates that data above any other. Additionally, there are federal laws that will be important for the board to consider. As you read through this proposed ordinance, please realize it may be found in violation of the following U.S. codes if passed and enforced. Title 18, Sections 241, 242, 245, 1038, 1341, and Title 42, Section 1983. The American Jurisprudence Book of the United States Law states, an emergency cannot create power, and no emergency justifies the violation of any of the provisions of the United States Constitution or states' constitutions. The U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and any legislation to be valid must be in agreement. It is impossible for both the Constitution and legislation violating it to be valid. One must prevail. The Health Department and others have stated this ordinance provides no new power, but at the same time admit the current order does not follow or does not allow for citation, and legal authority is needed to issue enforceable orders and is a primary reason for the proposed ordinance. This is a deceptive play on words. This ordinance would put too much power into the hands of a local health officer. Consider the ongoing emergency orders that our county has been living under since March, despite the inconsistent, unreliable data sources used, questionable recommendations, infringement on rights, and negative impacts on the community. This campaign, which originally started as flattening the curve, has now been changed to 10 positive cases or less per day and a widely administered vaccine in order for everyone to return back to normal. These goals sound reasonable and necessary to you. Not only are they unnecessary, but they are unattainable. Please vote no on this ordinance. Thank you.
Janet, you're muted again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Samantha is going to read Jerry Ripley's comments. He's regarding the rezoning that'll be acted on tonight.
Thank you. Jerry Ripley is in support of the Valu rezoning request. AIRS was contracted by Judy Valu back in May. AIRS has followed all of the guidance and steps as provided by County Planning and Development staff and submitted documentation and responded to questions in a timely manner. Issues related to the timing of notifications from the town board meeting due to the August special election were unfortunate and were not done by any party to circumvent or obfuscate the process. With unanimous votes with the township in August and again in September, and an unanimous vote from the planning committee, and with the support of the staff report, this rezoning request meets all requirements and qualifications for approval. Comments and concerns from the petitioners were addressed in both phone calls and with an open discussion of the September town board meeting. We believe we have been open and transparent in the process, and thank you for your consideration to approve the rezoning request. Thank you, Jerry Ripley.
Thank you.
That is 25 minutes of public comment. I need a few minutes for the written comments. The written comments have been provided to the board in a large number, and the time is constrained. So regarding the written comments, I'll be reading the person's name, subject, and position, but not the individual comments. The county board supervisors will be getting another stack of them tomorrow, but I'm going to read the written comments. Regarding the county health ordinance, the following people are against: Michelle Allen, Reverend Joshua D. Andrew and Cassie Draper, Jane Fleming, Anna Lee First Now, Gary and Betty Gerdes, Jared Hansen, Karen Herbison, Tom Hero, Rick and Diane Hobing, Alan and Carrie Jordan, Nathan and Marina Kent, Jim Koenig, Margie and Tom Meese, Brad and Charlene Merkel, David Miner, Jason Richards, Donald Sherman, Stephen Stray, Stephen Stevenson, William J. Sorry, there's my timing. William J. Vincent II, Lori Worth, Hillary Andrew, Kim Landry Ayers, Brian Stewart, Cindy Eckelberger, Jennifer Schaller, Tony Eckenberger, and Vanessa White. County Health Ordinance, there is one person for, and that is Gina Holt. Regarding the DHS audit, the people that are for it is Bethany Aberly, Michelle Allen, Jane Fleming, Karen Herbison, Tom Hero, Margie and Tom Meese, Noel Smith, Ross and Gretchen Springer, Brett Tangley, William Vincent, and a Jennifer and Aaron Jose. And one person is, or excuse me, two people are against it, are Cronje and Eleanor Wolf. And that will end our comment period.
Whoa. Chair. I can't hear him.
Samantha, are you muting? Are you muting people? You're muted.
I can hear you now, Chair.
But I can't hear Samantha.
Yes, probably me.
Oh, sorry about that. Thank you, Supervisor Beckfield. First, oral reports, the 2021 County Administrator's Budget Recommendation. Administrator Schaaf. Are you on?
Yes, I am, and
Okay.
I thank you, and good evening. Samantha is going to launch a PowerPoint. We put some slides together to provide the board with a high-level view of the 2021 recommended budget. The budget materials have been disseminated to the board in the form of a book, and we also have them online so that access is available if board members choose that, or if members of the community want to see different components of the book. I'd like to start out by saying thank you to the board, to the employees of Eau Claire County. In many ways, this recommendation is a compilation of a lot of hard work by many individuals to look at the requirements necessary to run the multifaceted operation that is county government. Next slide, Samantha. As we noted, there are many inputs into the budget process, and many of the opportunities have already happened, along with the oversight committees meeting with the finance committee and sharing in dialogue and discussion, as well as working with our staff. We have had many committee meetings where we have discussed the budget from a policy perspective to identify where this board would like to go with its recommendation. Samantha, could you please take us to the timeline and the ways to engage slide, please? Thank you. And so tonight we're recommending this budget and we're reviewing it with you, the board. The Finance and Budget Committee also has meetings scheduled, and we have the time and dates listed for you so that you can see the opportunities to participate with the Finance and Budget Committee as they have conversation with our community agencies, as they wrap up and discuss what their potential amendments may be. And then on October 20th, there will be a presentation of the amendments from the Finance and Budget Committee. Board members are also invited to participate in the budget amendment process. We will be emailing those forms to you and have them online, and you as individual board members are able to offer your budget amendments as well. We'll collect those. by October 28th and include them in the packet for the November public hearing and budget adoption meeting. So there are many ways for you as members of the board or members of our community to participate. Very briefly, our revenues and expenditures are listed here. We assumed when we went into this budget that the vehicle registration fee on revenue would remain flat at $2.3 million. That is a vital source that the county is using to maintain its roadways and highway infrastructure necessary for a strong economy. We're assuming a sales tax of $9.8 million. That's a reduction of $1 million from the 2020 budget. That is in response to the ongoing COVID pandemic and using a cautious approach to our budgeting. There are some fee increases that have been built into this budget, although they are not substantial. The net new construction was 2.3% increase, which allowed the county an additional $543,500 in levy operational dollars for this budget. And that takes our allowable levy to $37,470,095 and a mill rate of $3.96 on the revenue side of our projections. As far as our expenditures go, the operational areas reduced their overall expenditures for 2021. And many of our areas are seeing significant reductions in their overall expenditures. Not every area was able to reduce to the same amount. However, because of the work that is being done to reduce those expenditures, as well as keeping open positions that the county has that have not been filled and remain vacant in 2021, we were able to pull together this recommendation and put in place a 1.5% COLA increase. That is our cost of living increase for our employees. It is an essential component of keeping our salary structure consistent with our current market and our comparables, not only in the Chippewa Valley, but across the state. The FTE count that you see there is 601.89. That is the correct number. We realized as we were pulling together our presentation that we missed updating that number in your budget book on page 11. We will update it on the website, but it will not be updated, of course, in your printed copy. So if you could make that note. The way that we were able to hold our health insurance to the 7.79% was in making changes to the HSA contribution that the county provides. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later when we go through the other slides that summarize the recommendations. Our budget is a product of many inputs, one of which is our strategic plan. And you see a graphic that shows the key areas of the strategic plan. Not only do we look at what our strategic plan says that we as an organization want to accomplish, we also look at what is happening in our community, and we look at steep trends, the sociological, the technological, environmental, economic, and political trends that are shaping our community, because the work that we do is in response to what our community needs. One of the ways that we have looked at this budget recommendation is in terms of the policies and priorities that the Finance and Budget Committee walked through this board with. And so Samantha, if you'll proceed to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about how this budget recommendation matches some of those desired outcomes. One of the things that we saw not only in our strategic plan, but also in the policies and priorities for the board are financial and institutional stability. And so that, again, is where the conservative revenue projections come in, because we were very cautious to not overinflate those numbers for 2021. The reduced expenditures are also an outcome of maintaining that financial and institutional stability. And we continue to work on our long-term capital plan and our property master plan. In 2021, we are likely as an organization to need more conversation around that. Along with that, the Finance and Budget Committee, as well as the Finance Director, are looking at long-term financial planning and having discussions on debt and operating levy. The next area that we looked at is in the area of social need. And one of the things that we know that as a county government, many of the services that we provide in the area of social need become much more important at times of crisis, similar to what is happening with COVID-19. What we don't know right now is more than what we do know. And I think that is one of the key areas where we continue to be cautiously optimistic. Some of our economic indicators locally are showing that our region, and particularly the Chippewa Valley and Eau Claire County, are in better economic shape than many of our other partners in local government across the nation, but we continue to watch those economic indicators. The COVID dashboard is located on our website and can be used as a tool to track where we're going as an economy and as a region. And we will continue to keep that information updated so that our board and others can see what is happening. And the next slide, please. One of the things that we hear a lot about in our discussions with oversight committees and even the Finance and Budget Committee were the importance of preventative programs and services. And the programs and services that we continue to focus on are the nutrient management, which protects our water quality, our land conservation practices, and our updated zoning code. These are areas that continue to be a focus and funded in the 2021 budget. Along with that, the area of health continues to be important, and that's including water, restaurant sampling, the POUTS work, which is actually the rural septic program, and COVID-19 response. Along with that, we also have earlier responses and interventions in human services in the areas of child welfare, crisis services, and behavioral health. And we're starting to see some change in that area as we even move through the COVID-19 pandemic. We also have continued funding for the Criminal Justice Collaborating Council, and that's in connection with our treatment courts as well as our Stepping Up initiative, which has specific programming that is designed to reduce the negative outcomes when you have law enforcement interventions that do not include consideration for our overall health of our constituents. And our local law enforcement are working very carefully with other partners to improve those outcomes. We also have a continuity in our funding for our community partners. As noted, the Finance and Budget Committee will be meeting with those community partners, many of which provide services that complement county government services. We also have a budget that we believe will allow us to very cautiously move into future budgets. We set this budget up with considerations for what will happen in the future. And a few things that I'd like to touch on. First of all, our capital plan. We've made the adjustments necessary to provide for our infrastructure enhancements, specifically our highway facility. We've also looked at some of our formerly batched capital expenditures, and we've moved those to the operating budget, specifically in terms of like some of the smaller technologies such as laptops. It is considered a best practice to not batch those and include them on capital, but to have them in operations. By doing that, it allows us the flexibility to utilize capital funds for the investment in infrastructure that we will need in future years. And it also is consistent with the work that we have done with the rating agencies in conversation to talk about how we as a local government are managing our debt to operating levy. Our compensation plan was adjusted to balance our wages with the additional benefits. So while we provided options for addressing our healthcare affordability in 2021 with this work, we are also providing for that affordability in 2022. We were fortunate in 2021 to have within our contract with our health insurance provider a do not exceed amount. And that do not exceed amount was around 13%, that overall our cost for health insurance, just the health insurance portion of it, would not exceed that 13%. If we did not have that, we would have seen an increase of around 36% this year. And that is based on our medical loss ratio. We continue to watch our medical loss ratio, and if we continue as we have in the past, we will need to identify options for 2022 for financing the affordability of our health insurance plan, which is an essential component of our overall package that we offer to our employees. This year, by making some changes in the HSA contributions so that they're more in line with our comparable counties, we are able to take those funds and reallocate them to the cost of living adjustment. And this takes our overall compensation plan and makes it more in line, again, with the Chippewa Valley and with our other local governments. We're also looking from a future budget standpoint in terms of what we're going to need for funding in the future. Broadband expansion and the cost matches for the public grants that are allowed is one area where we will look to continue to budget. The Next Gen 911 will be a project that we are hoping to obtain grant funding for, but that will be coming up in future years for our communication center as we continue to ensure that our public safety radio communications, and those are the services that are our first responder services in that vital communication, that they are modernized using the most current technology and allowing individuals with technology to access that 911 service. So that's going to be an investment that we as a county will make along with our city partners in our communication center. We also will have funding for our branch 6 courtroom. That will be capital, as well as having added personnel to staff the increased activity in 2022. So those are some of the things that are on the horizon that we talked about at length as we talked about putting these projections together. We also have a commitment to maintaining our physical assets and infrastructure and putting the appropriate investment into those assets. And I think the board has made some consistent and measured progress in the last number of years in the area of highway, as we've seen our PACER rating improve year over year. What we also included in this budget, in the capital funding, is for the highway facility, what they're calling phase 1, which is some of the site planning and improvements. That portion of the work can stand alone, but it's meant to be the first step in building a new highway structure, which will allow for a modern and efficient and more effective highway program. The key decision point that you as a board will be taking, led by the Finance and Budget Committee, will be the build out of the new highway building and the relocation to the new site, and when you as a board want to undertake that work. We did make adjustments in the, 2021 capital request to cover immediate needs that are actually rolling over into 2020 budgeting. And one of the things that you will see coming forward from Finance Director Kirk, as well as the Finance and Budget Committee, are going to be recommendations on some changes to our existing capital plans so that we can make the most use of the assets and the resources that we have available. And we do continue to make the overall long-term use planning for our real property assets a priority. Service levels are also one of the priority areas. And one of the things that we talk about as a county government is that Many of our services are actually funded by grants and aids that come from other levels of government, whether it be federal or state. Because as a county government, we are a provider of services on behalf of those entities. And if funding is reduced in those areas, we must consider consciously reducing the level of service because the property tax levy is inadequate to fill the holes that would be left if funding is severely reduced. The 2021 budget did not see significant reductions in those funding sources at this time. We also look for consistency with our strategic plan and what we put forward in the budget and the budget policies and priorities. So there are a couple of things that I'd like to highlight that are in this budget and are consistent with our strategic plan. The first is equity, diversity, inclusion, and social justice. That has been an ongoing dialogue with our board for some time, and there has been work leading up to this. However, the 2021 budget is asking for some specific investments into a shared position with the city of Eau Claire and the county of a position that would actually work specifically on equity with our employees and with our organization so we can begin some of the hard work of having conversations and producing for our employees and for those who interact with us a better and more inclusive workplace. We know that that's ongoing work and it needs constant attention. Along with that, we're continuing to participate in community-based approaches in multiple areas with our community partners, as well as in the area of the Stepping Up program with the racial equity and diversity improvements. We're developing a long-term capital plan based on need and also looking at our debt structure. That links directly back to our strategic plan as an initiative that the board wanted to have worked on. We're looking at citizen engagement software that we can share with the city of Eau Claire that is built on actual metrics that we can obtain from our community, and we can develop it as a more thorough platform. You'll notice this year that Supervisor Pagonis provided some significant input and helped us really get the citizen survey up and going. And that's an area of continued work where we look to actually take and make room for a broader approach and ongoing dialogue with the citizens we serve. And we continue as an organization to build the systems that support our governmental operations. That's the IT infrastructure and the technological solutions necessary to run an organization of this size. We look for process automation, centralized process guardrails, and improved organizational operations. And there's just a couple of them. Aristotle, which is going to help us work with our remote workforce more carefully. NeoGov Learn, which is one where we will be able to utilize that for maintaining records on compliance as well as moving training through our organization. A couple quick notes then on some of our public services. Many of our board members are familiar with the chart that you see in front of you. It shows the largest areas of our public service, and it shows where the expenditures are made. And as you can see from the chart, many of the services that are actually provided in our county are in the area of health and human services. 39% of all expenditures come from that area. Transportation is another area that is next with 24%, and public safety is 17% of that total. When we look at it from a levy perspective, levy dollars serve a slightly different function because both the area of health and human services and transportation rely heavily on state and federal aids to provide those services. And so when we look at our levy portions, that list flips a little bit, and you have public safety first with 32% of the levy, then transportation at 20%, tied with general government, which is also 20%, and health and human services, which is 19% of the property tax levy. The area where we're seeing the most growth in our overall budget, though, is in the area of our debt. And Samantha, if you'll, thank you. So we do continue to utilize capital for our technology infrastructure, and that is the basic systems that help our organization run. This year, we've invested and moved up to be in line with our partners in the city. Investment in the area of the Sheriff's Department of around $330,000 to upgrade video systems and necessary infrastructure that they need to operate. Along with that, it also includes vehicle replacements and our ongoing infrastructure maintenance. That's all of our buildings as well as our highway, the roadways, as well as the infrastructure. Our new debt issuance and our debt service levy are on the screen. The debt service levy is around $12,446,856. And the new debt issuance that is recommended is $9.93 million. Debt service remains at 10% of the overall budget of all expenditures. So it is one area where we're seeing some growth. There are some more detailed charts within the budget narrative that will actually show you some of the difference between our growth in the area of debt to fund essential operations. So we will, as the staff, we will be getting to you the budget amendment process forms and the instructions through your email. But you can also go online to actually navigate the online documents. And Samantha, if you would click the link, please, and take us to that website, we can just very quickly take a quick look at all of the materials that are out there for our board members to access. Again, I would like to highlight that any of our employees who can answer questions for you, especially our department heads and others, about the recommendations that are included in this book, they would be happy to explain any of it to you. Norb Kirk, the finance director, and his team have done significant work this year, upgrading the metrics that you have in summary form, as well as making significant enhancements to the actual departmental overview. Samantha, would you go to one of the departments, please? And let's take a real quick look at what that looks like within the department. And so this year, to help not only educate board members, but also to inform other partners, each area has put forward specifics on their department mission, the strategic direction and what the priority issues are for their area, the trends and the issues on the horizon, any operational changes and the fiscal impact, as well as potential risks. So each departmental area has an extensive discussion as part of their submission for the 2021 budget to help board members understand, even in areas where if you're not on that committee, you can see and gain an understanding of the policy direction and the reason for the policy direction that has been chosen. Sam, if you'll just scroll up a little bit to show some of the other materials. Many of our board members have already seen these materials, but we also included the overall organizational chart for each area, as well as a budget analysis and information on performance measures and revenue sources and the expectation of confidence levels on whether or not those revenue assumptions can be met. And so the team has done a lot of work to present the information uniformly and more thoroughly. And I'd like to thank them for that work. And with that, I have no other comments unless board members have specific questions.
I have excuse me. I have a request from Supervisor Wilkie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one general question, and at a later date we can get more into specifics in terms of the numbers. But Catherine, you noted that within your proposed recommendation, you're providing a 1.5 COLA increase, but then an SHA contribution. And of course, we've many of us are aware of and have talked about the fact that we're challenged as far as recruiting and retaining qualified employees, less than desired competitive compensation that we've been providing. With your recommended budget, as an employee, do they see a net gain or flat or a decrease?
That's an excellent question. And it's going to really depend on a number of factors. And what I will do is I will work with our team. I cannot answer that this evening, but I can work with the team and we can do an analysis based on average. Our goal in the work that we did this year was to align our compensation structure to be competitive in the market, but you raised a very good point, and we will do that analysis and get that to you.
Okay, thank you. I look forward to that.
Thank you. Please lower your hand, Supervisor Wilt. Thank you. Having concluded that, the chair now refers the 2021 administrator's recommended budget to the Committee on Finance and Budget for its review and recommendations and potential amendments. The next item on our agenda, under presentation of petitions, claims, and communications. First is a rezoning request from owner and applicant Troy Schneider for the town of Pleasant Valley. And second is a rezoning request from owner and applicant Paul W. and Joella Roush for the town of Otter Creek. These two items will come forward again to a future meeting. Next item on our agenda is first reading of ordinances by committees. File number 73.
To create chapter 8.30 of the code, communicable disease, and to amend section 1.50.02 of the code, citation code.
This the first reading. This item will go forward to our October the 20th meeting. Next item on our agenda.
Supervisor Smyer.
I'm sorry. Would you raise your hand? I can't tell who's.
Oh, this is Supervisor Gibson.
Well, Supervisor Gibson, I will acknowledge the fact that you and I are probably technologically challenged, so I recognize.
Well, I figured this would be quicker than going through all the. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Anyway, I know this is first reading, but
right.
You know, I think us as county board members, you know, we've all received all kinds of emails and stuff, a tremendous amount of them. We also received an email from the Chamber of Commerce from Scott Rogers, the Governmental Affairs and Workforce Director.
Right.
And he was asking if us in the city would withdraw the proposal until they can do a community census, you know, if they can reach a census on this. So, you know, if I can at this time, even though it's first reading, I'd like to make that a motion.
Well, a motion would not be in order at this point, but your informational point is well made. There are also other efforts in the community to provide public education regarding the ordinance. The chair notes that in the public comments, there was frequent confusion between the public health officer's order and the ordinance. So I'd want to clarify that first. But I think that part of what you're requesting, Supervisor Gibson, may be met by community education sessions, the first of which would be tomorrow evening at 5:45. And I believe that Administrator Schaaf could provide the information about that, accessing it.
Yes, actually, the information is it's actually on the city's website. We can also put it on our website and send that link to the Board of Supervisors. So we will make sure that that is forwarded to all of the Board of Supervisors for their use.
And
all right. Yeah, if we could do that, that'd be wonderful.
Okay, I was going to add to that point that when this comes up for second reading, we always have the option of postponing decision, making recommendation for task force, and a number of other things that might meet what you're looking for.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's ringing again harder.
Yep.
Who's talking? Sorry. Okay, next is from the Committee on Administration. No, I'm sorry. Under item 10, from the Committee on Administration and Finance of the Budget, file number 28.
To amend section 2.04.485 of the code, Committee on Finance and Budget, and to amend section 2.06.060 of the code, budget preparation and execution, and chapter 4.02 of the code, budgetary procedure.
This is second reading, so the chair looks for motion. Please do it by chat.
Mr. Chair, this is Robin Leary. I had to call in because the WebEx would not work on the iPad. I have no idea what caller ID number I am, but I would like to make the
You're number one now.
motion.
Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I would like to move approval of this amended ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Could we have a second by chat, please?
Supervisor Gatlin.
Samantha?
Hear me, second by Supervisor Gatlin.
Supervisor Gatlin seconds. Thank you. Explanation. Supervisor Pagonis, would you like to provide explanation here?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really don't have very much to say. This has been at least the third or fourth time that this ordinance modification has come to the county board. Just to refresh everyone's memory, the county board chair chose to set up an ad hoc committee to evaluate it. What you have before you is the outcome. This 2021-028 is the outcome of the ad hoc committee. There are a few typographical errors, but don't be bothered by them. And it was approved in the ad hoc committee 7-0. So I think everyone's questions should be answered by now unless someone has a specific question.
I see a request to speak from Supervisor DeLuca.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My concern is with the governing committees. It seems like, and I might be wrong in this, but that we don't have as much of a say in the budget process. It only comes to that one coordinated meeting where the department chair, the governing committee, and the finance and budget come together to discuss the budget. In past practice, the governing committee had an opportunity to look at the budget sooner than that and then vote on it and move it forward. Is that no longer the case?
No, that is still the procedure. This makes no change in that procedure.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could respond to that, this is
Yes,
Supervisor
please.
Pagonis. Certainly, the chair of each governing committee has the opportunity to bring the budget to the committee before the joint meeting. And at the joint meeting, at least this year, each of the governing committees amended and approved their relative budgets. So the practice has proceeded. Finance and budget did not vote on any of the budgets so far. So the budget you see in the budget book, it reflects what the governing committee has voted on and what the county administrator is recommending.
It's just that I thought the reason why we're putting this into the code is to explain the process, and it seems like that part of the process isn't really identified in the information. It just only mentions the governing committee's weigh-in at that joint meeting.
The purpose of the ordinance was to lay out the authorities, duties, responsibilities of the Committee on Finance and Budget, which was not clear in the county code. So it has more to do with that than with the process.
All right, so I do believe in our code under governing committees, it does state that we have a right to weigh in and vote. So I just wanted to make sure that was still available.
That's correct.
Thank you.
I see no other hands raised. Supervisors, I would prefer to do this vote by poll. Samantha, can we do that?
We can, I just need you to give me a minute to set it up.
Okay. And then Supervisor Schneider, when we come to that
And
point, I
Larry.
think we'll have to take yours by oral.
Oh, I was getting ready to send Samantha an email. That
Oh,
was
that's fine. That's fine.
That's our typical.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that satisfactory?
Yes, it is. I see a hand raised. Supervisor Kronk, did you wish to address the board?
Thank you, I did. Sorry, I was
Sorry.
trying to click my hand earlier. I just have a question. In the discussion and the presentation that we heard from Administrator Schaaf earlier about, the budget process and things that we've been working on, I don't see anything in here that specifies that this committee will ensure that each department brings forward a budget with a racial equity lens.
That would not be a requirement from the committee, and you're correct. There's no such specific requirement. I would suggest to you that if you wish to see that in there, you could meet with Corp Counsel and draw up a resolution if you wished, or you could meet with one of the oversight committees, perhaps Finance and Budget or one of the others, and discuss that possibility.
So just for point of clarification, that would not be an allowable amendment here?
No, not at this point.
Thank you.
Okay, supervisors. Samantha, how are we doing?
Could you please repeat what the vote is, what the question is, so I know whether.
Okay, we're voting on file 28, and this is the file which defines the duties, responsibilities, authorities of the Committee on Finance and Budget, and adds a small addition to budgetary procedure. It's consistent with that. Is that what you were asking for? Is that what you wanted?
Yes, that's fine. Yes, that's fine.
Supervisor Pagonis, am I correct?
Yes, and Chair Smeyer, if I could just complete my response to Supervisor DeLuca, the
Sorry.
County Code 2.04.140 specifically states each committee shall review budget requests and shall forward the recommendations to the county administrator for referral to the Committee on Finance and Budget. So it's in the code. That has not changed.
Thank you. Supervisor Kronk, okay. Supervisor Kronk?
Okay, thank you. I thought she was responding to Supervisor DeLuca, but point taken.
Well, I'm sorry, but both of you then.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. Samantha? Oh, I see. You now have the poll up on your screen. Please vote accordingly. You vote and then you have to hit the submit button. Is it coming through, Samantha?
Yes, just verifying we have everybody. I have 29 yeses.
Okay, thank you. The vote is unanimous. Thank you, supervisors. Next item on our agenda is from the Committee on Human Resources, file 72.
To amend section 2.09.005A of the code, legal holidays, and to amend section 2.09.010A of the code, business hours.
This is the second reading of this ordinance. So we will vote on this tonight. A motion, please. By chat. Samantha,
Motion by Supervisor Neiman, second by Supervisor Gatlin.
thank you. Explanation, Supervisor Beckfield? Are you there?
Could Supervisor Gatlin take that? I'm having a technical difficulty right now.
Sure. Supervisor Gatlin, will you?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's pretty self-explanatory. Instead of having employees come to work on Martin Luther King Day, where in the past have had some professional development type speakers, they're going to make it an official holiday. It will be a holiday where the employees will be paid and they don't have to come into the building.
Okay, thank
And
you.
support it, and I would recommend everybody else support it too. It pretty is common practice that public service buildings and employees are on holiday on Martin Luther King Day.
Thank you. Supervisor Cronk, I see your hand up. Is that for this, or did you forget to take it down?
Sorry, my hand is getting sore. I forgot to take.
Okay. Other questions or comments on this particular file? We will do this by voice vote because I do not anticipate controversy on it. So all those, unmute your microphones first. In favor of this file 72, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All those opposed by nay. The chair consider this a unanimous vote. Thank you very much. The next item is from the Committee on Planning and Development. 9.
This is to amend section of the code in section 15 regarding planning and development and the commercial electric code, and also some fee schedule changes.
Thank you. Motion, please. Hi, chat. Samantha?
Sorry, they're just coming in. Motion by Supervisor Jansen.
Second.
Ray Henning.
Second by Coffee.
Thank you. Second by Coffee. Explanation. Supervisor Gibson, I guess.
All right. Yeah, it is me, Nick.
Okay.
Thanks, Supervisor Smyer. Okay. I'm not going to get into a whole bunch of detail, and I guess if anybody's got a tremendous amount of questions, Rod is online to explain a lot of stuff. But this ordinance is following the Department of Planning and Development's requirement to update the commercial electrical code. The one thing is there's no physical impact, but with the fee changes, estimating this will bring in approximately about $2,500 more in additional revenue.
Thank you. I see a request to speak from Supervisor Dunning, followed by Supervisor DeLuca.
Supervisor Dunning, I actually had my hand raised because I was trying to second something and I didn't, I guess I wasn't, I need to do it a different way, so.
Okay. Thank you for take your hand down now, please.
Hand down.
Supervisor DeLuca, did you wish to comment or ask a question?
Yes. I don't have my access to my document to find the number, but I had kind of a confliction in one of the sections. It says that you have to pull a permit for heating, plumbing, and electrical. And then in the section below that, it said something about you do not need to pull a permit for a furnace, a water heater, a roof, so forth. So what is the difference? I know I replaced a water heater one time and I didn't think I needed a permit, but I guess I did need a permit because I changed the venting from the roof to motorized out the side. I don't know. I'm just looking for clarification on that.
Supervisor Gibson, may I ask Director Esslinger to respond?
I was going to say the same thing.
You want
Yep. Good evening, board members. Yeah, we are, I can answer that. So as far as that statement, I don't have the specific language up in front of me right here, but generally speaking, Supervisor DeLuca, is that when you go to replace those types of particular units, there's not necessarily a permit that's needed. It's more about the plumbing to get the, whether it's a gas furnace or if it's a electric furnace or a hot water heater. It's about the connection that's important, going back to the breaker. That's what's important. It's not necessarily getting a permit for the hot water heater or the actual furnace. Now we are in some cases different than the city of Eau Claire. The city of Eau Claire has adopted the entire uniform dwelling code, which allows them to issue permits for exchanging windows, doors, siding, and roof permits. At the county level, we don't get into that level of permitting. We don't require a permit to reshingle your roof. Now, those that do, you are to follow the code, but we don't issue a permit for that. So I don't know if that helps clarify those. We can talk offline, tomorrow if to get into the exact code. Again, I'm not looking at it. I'm just seeing what's on the screen right now, which everybody else is. So hopefully that helps. If not, again, I would offer an offline call. We can talk more at length tomorrow.
Okay, I'm guessing you probably answered it. It's probably more a city permit I had to pull versus a county permit. So, all right, thanks.
You're welcome. Any other questions as it relates? The other thing I would like to, if I may, Chair Smyer, just to point out in this particular one of the things that we did, with all of our codes every year, we do an assessment of our codes and obviously our permits. And as Supervisor Gibson indicated, yes, we are increasing the fees for our building codes. One of the things that this ordinance does is that we are relinquishing our authority as it relates to commercial buildings in the county. Now, we had a very small authority to begin with. Let me state that. We did an assessment of the amount of permits, and it's usually 2 to 3, maybe 5 commercial permits a year that we actually have authority to review and issue. In many cases, we would spend a lot of time working with potential customers, and they would never. It never come to fruition, or they would never make application. And so therefore we looked at that part of the code and we made the assessment of okay, we're going to eliminate that part of the county code, relinquish that authority and give that back to the state. And so the state of Wisconsin will still have the authority. It's not going to be it's not going to be missed. Those individuals will just be working with a state building inspector who will do the permitting. So it's not that it's not going to be done. However, it will be done at the state level versus at the county.
Thank you. Supervisor DeLuca, anything else?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Are you done?
Oh, sorry, I forgot to put my hand down.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. All right. Any other questions, comments in regard to file 59? I believe we can do this by voice vote also. Supervisors, please unmute your microphones. All those in favor of file 59, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed by nay. It is unanimous. Thank you. The next is file 50.
Amending the 1982 official zoning district boundary map for the town of Brunswick.
Motion.
Henning will move.
Okay, Supervisor Henning. We're gonna teach you how to do that someday. Okay.
Second by Supervisor Anderson.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson seconds. Explanation, Supervisor Gibson?
Thank you, Chairman Snyder. This is to rezone 30 acres from AP district to a 2 agriculture district to divide the existing home and surrounding property and allow for creation of 2 additional lots. The Eau Claire County and the town of Brunswick include the property in the rural preservation planning area. Planning and development staff finds that the proposed rezoning request conforms with the Eau Claire County planning and recognizes that proposed A2 zoning is consistent and allowed within the mapped future land use. The town of Brunswick considered this rezoning and voted 3-0 for approval. Planning and Development Committee held its public hearing and voted 5-0 for approval.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Supervisor Neiman.
I believe we got a subsequent email about some of the adjacent property owners objecting. I was just wondering why 10 of the 11 neighboring property owners objected to this request.
Supervisor Maury may be able to illuminate that. I see his hand up.
Yes, I was at the town meeting where this was actually reconsidered. It was on the agenda last time and it was not, well, I guess it was withdrawn. The town of Brunswick did meet again and the property owners were able to present their objections. The objections varied. The biggest one was lack of proper notification. The town agenda where it was considered did not list the property under the name that they were familiar with. It was like the person who had inherited the property and married name. And so even if they had looked at the agenda, they wouldn't have known that this was the property right across the street. And the letter from the planning and development to the property owners came 4 days after Brunswick initially voted. So they had no opportunity to provide public input. So there was a special meeting scheduled. I was in attendance along with the neighbors, a lot of the neighbors to the property. The town board still voted 3-0. But, you know, I'm going to vote against this just as kind of a symbolic vote because I would like to refer back to Supervisors Beckfield emphasizing transparency. In this case, the property owners were not aware that the town board was meeting on the said property. And I think being as transparent as we can be, we need to move to have all of our towns and all of our committees and boards publish not only agenda ahead of time, but they should publish a full packet like we do as a county board. I've also noticed that sometimes we don't get our minutes up very quickly. And even the city county health department publishes an agenda with items that say, see attached materials, but only the board, the health board members get the actual full packet. The only thing that's published on the web is the agenda. So I think I would like to just make the point that we need to move to full transparency in all of our operations. And even though legally, maybe we're only required to publish an agenda, there's no reason in this day and age that we can't publish a full board packet and have it be scanned in and be available on the web. I think all the towns could do the same thing. Right now, the town of Brunswick, they publish their agenda on a physical board outside the town hall. and at the 4 Mile Restaurant and Bar. So those are the two places where they're published.
I'd like to make comment on that because as the townships go, the townships fall under different rule than the county does, and required by the state of Wisconsin, they are only required to post what the agenda is in 2 places.
I realize that, but I'm asking that we
So
move to
the county
more
cannot
full
change it.
transparency.
Yeah, well, the county
As a
can't
county.
change that for the townships.
Mhm. Well, the towns can change it for themselves.
They may choose to do more than that. They have to do at least the state minimum. And yes, it is their choice. I think that's correct.
Chair, this is Supervisor Leary. I'd like to make a comment. I think the
Supervisor Leary on the
petition,
phone.
thank you. I think it's important to note that when the Planning and Development Committee met, the petition had not been submitted. I know that my vote would have been different had the individuals submitted their protest petition before the P&D meeting. So it is misleading, the 5-0 vote, but at the same time, our hands were constrained because it does meet the various requirements and staff were making a positive recommendation. But I think it bears noting that the protest petition had not been submitted at that point.
Well, one reason for that was that the landowners had not been notified of the issue because the town board had already met 4 days before, and they got the planning and development letter 4 days after the town had already voted.
It seems that this is not a matter that this board can resolve. It will note and perhaps make some recommendations to you about what the towns or your township could do. Is that acceptable, Supervisor Mallory?
Yes, and I did recommend that at the meeting. I recommended that they not rely on planning and development to notify neighbors in the case of zoning, that some towns do notify the neighbors themselves, and that might be a recommended best practice.
Okay. Thank you. Supervisor Knight, I see your hand raised. Supervisor Knight?
Hear me? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I wonder if Supervisor Maury or anyone could fill me in that on the township meeting. Did they have specific objections to the rezoning beyond the late notification?
Supervisor Maury?
They had a variety of objections and part, I think, but which I think went beyond the current guidelines of the strategic plan or the land use plan. One objection was that, that they would like to preserve the habitat that was being involved. The wetlands are going to be protected even in the building or adding new residences. But, that is a prime habitat for things like wildlife, migrating birds, butterflies. It's a wooded area. There's a stream and there's wetlands as well. So I think that's a valid point, even though it doesn't fit within the guidelines of our, comprehensive land use plans. Preserving.
Okay.
Supervisor Gibson, was that you?
Yes. I'd like to add, because as far as the whole process goes, this is the first step. It's just a rezoning, okay? There's a whole building process where there's more applications that have to be submitted after the fact in order to even build a home on it, which, talking about the wetlands, they can't build in the wetlands, and they have to have a building site approved before they can even start their buildings. And then there's guidelines that go along with, that whole process. So this is just a rezoning. So if wetlands and all this habitat was to apply to it and they didn't meet what was requirements for the building, they can't even build on it anyway. So
thank you. Supervisor Neiman,
more
I see.
of a process to this.
Thank you. Supervisor Neiman, I see your hand raised. It's not raised. Okay. Supervisor Knight, Supervisor DeLuca, I see your hands raised. Supervisor Knight, did you have more to say?
No, sorry.
Okay, Supervisor DeLuca, did you have more to say?
Yes, I noticed that they're only dividing it into 3 chunks.
Two parcels.
Well, I thought there was a 12, an 11, and a 5 acre.
Well, one is the existing property, and they're dividing the remaining lot into 2 additional lots.
Was the concern that those divisions were too small?
No.
The complaints from the people surrounding them, were they asking that?
Nope. The
That's
complaints
correct.
that
They
we
were-
heard at our public hearing, in fact, I'm just, Rod, if you want to speak to this, I'd step in.
Yep. I was trying to raise my hand, but it didn't allow me.
I didn't see your hand.
No, I don't even have the feature. I was trying to. I was raising it here online. So again, board members, this is Rod Esslinger. So maybe I just back up just a little bit, because I think we've, there's multiple paths here. I just want to, first and foremost, when, the process, I know transparency was discussed tonight, and when an application comes in, I just want to back up just a little bit so the board understands. When an application comes in, we make sure that we understand when the town board meeting is going to be had, and with this particular, the application was in, and it was not clear to us initially. We had the August 11th, which was the kind of the normal meeting date but that was an election day, and so the town board had moved the meeting to August 4th. And when we sent the notice out, Supervisor Mallory is correct in the sense that, when we sent it out, we were kind of caught between, when the meeting actually happened, because that was our deadline. August 4th was our deadline. We sent the meeting out, the meeting notice to the neighbors after that. Again, it was unbeknownst that the meeting had been changed. I think the point here is that the notice got out. They were, although they didn't attend the first one, the town offered a second meeting. The town board came to the same conclusion and reaffirmed their initial position of a 3-0 vote. As did the Committee on Planning and Development heard from many property owners the evening of the public hearing, of which it was the comments. I know that was a question. The comments varied from the price, the asking price of the land was too much, environmental corridors. There was floodplain mapping done or floodplain on the property. In this particular case, before the applicant even made application for the rezoning, they really dove into that part of it, and they had a flood study done to delineate where the actual flood boundary was on this. And so they did that in an effort to ensure that there was appropriate building area on it. Access was another concern. The town board did look at access points along Cedar Road, and they did approve one access point would be a joint access, and another one would serve an individual lot, the smaller lot, the 5-acre lot. Other comments were given at the public hearing at the county level is that the land use was not, the proposed land use was not consistent. I think testimony by the applicant actually stated in reverse of that. And I think that was some of the written testimony that you may have received as a board from the clerk earlier today is that of the adjacent 32 properties, I think 28 of them would be of smaller size of what the applicant is proposing. And to be clear, what the applicant is proposing, the rezoning, yes, Supervisor Gibson is correct. This is the first step of a couple steps to follow. The next step, if this is approved tonight, would be require the creation of a certified survey map. Mr. Ripley is a professional land surveyor. He would be, that map would be reviewed by our office to create a 3-lot CSM. And just to be clear, 1 lot would contain the existing residence, which I believe is the 12-acre. One lot would be 13 acres. That would be a vacant lot. And then the 5-acre lot that's was discussed tonight, that would also be a vacant lot. So at the end of the day, potential for 2 additional residences in this area. Other concerns that were stated were added additional traffic and perhaps additional crime. Crime would go up. And then I believe discharge of hunting rifles and firearms was another concern. But if you look at, if you've looked at the aerial, you'll see that there's a fair amount of single-family residential development. There's actually a subdivision just immediately east of the said parcel, and there's other property, other lots that are about 5 acres that were done prior to. So definitely this is not an isolated corridor. And just so you understand, when staff really does an analysis of this, we really do dive in both to the town plan, the county plan. We look at adjacent land uses, and obviously we take into consideration what the town board has to say, and the testimony. And the testimony sometimes doesn't, point to the direction of tipping it, in one way or another. As far as transparency, when we get an application, those applications go up on our website. We try to be as transparent as possible. But I think with this application, Matt really has succinctly identified it in the fact sheet, kind of the process as we normally do. It outlines the town board. In this particular case, the town board offered a second opportunity for those individuals, the adjacent property owners, to come back and give input. They reaffirmed that decision. The Planning and Development Committee looked at it as 5-0. The other thing that we should note is the protest that was already mentioned this evening. And in accord to the Wisconsin statutes that cited in the fact sheet that all the board members had received, because the petition had been submitted, this matter does require 3/4 votes of the members that are present tonight. But I think we are at a full board tonight, so it'd be 3/4 of the 25 or 29 members that are available. I personally confirmed that the petition was signed by more than property owners that represent 50% or more of the proposed area and are within 15 or 300 feet. So I confirmed that, and so that vote is required this evening. I'll conclude. That's a lengthy description, but I'll conclude at that. If there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. And Mr. Michaels is also online tonight if there's more specific detailed questions for him. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Knight, your hand is still raised.
Oh, okay. It may be raised all the rest of the evening.
Oh,
unless I can figure out how to get it down.
Sorry, just checking to make sure.
Okay, I got it.
We have, I think we have come to the end of our discussion. I see no other hands raised.
Schneider with a question.
Oh, sorry, Supervisor Schneider, please.
So he just said that more than 50% of the owners are against it. Did I understand that correctly?
Mr. Esslinger?
Yes, that those would be, so that is specific to the protest petition that's filed. So by statute, if more than 50% of the adjacent property owners are opposed to the rezoning, then it does require a 3/4 vote by the county board. And that is in your updated fact sheet that you all received. So yes, that would be accurate.
Well, I'd like to add to that too, because the petition came before the township allowed everybody to come in for the second meeting for clarification on a lot of stuff. You know, because
So we
I
don't know how
so
they
I
feel
think-
now?
No, we don't. So, because when we held our public hearing at the Planning and Development Committee, I mean, they were more concerned. I mean, one of them was very concerned because they were selling it for more than what they felt it was worth. So that was an argument. There was others that brought up that, you know, they thought that, you know, there was going to be a lot more building and that there was going to be a higher traffic level and crime, as Mr. Esslinger brought up, you know, which there's only allowed 2 homes in there with what's going on right now. So, I mean, those things, I think they got worked out at the second town board meeting.
Am I correct, Mr. Esslinger, in assuming we have met all the statutory requirements regarding this request? Is that correct?
Yes, we have.
Okay. Then the chair is going to call for a vote on this now. I believe that we can also do this. Well, if we have to do it by a 3/4 vote, we have to make sure we have 3/4. Let's do it by a poll vote, please. Samantha, can you set that up?
Chair Smyer,
Yes, sir.
Supervisor Maury, the agenda says a 2/3 vote, and Mr. Esslinger just said 3/4. Which is it?
It's 3/4.
Okay.
It's the petition. The citation is in the updated fact sheet that the board received, and the agenda. I believe that it does say that is incorrect. So what you have is stated correctly out of the Wisconsin statutes.
Okay, statutory requirement. Supervisor Maury, that answer?
Yes, it does. I just wanted clarification on that.
Okay,
They're
thank you.
2 different figures.
You now have the poll up in front of you. Please vote and do not forget to click on the submit button.
And this is for resolution 50?
Yes, I'm sorry. That's right. How are we doing, Samantha?
I have 19 yeses and 10 nos.
That's not 3/4 by my mathematics. Is that correct?
I believe 3/4 would be 21.75, but my husband's the accountant, so we'll trust my math.
I think we would say 22 probably. So the chair's read on this is that the motion is defeated. And we will now move on to file 65.
Amending the 1982 official zoning district boundary map for the town of Pleasant Valley.
Motion. Samantha.
By Supervisor Gatlin.
Moved by Supervisor Gatlin, second by
Supervisor Anderson.
Supervisor Anderson. Explanation, Supervisor Gibson.
Yeah, this request was to rezone 11.7 acres from AP agriculture to A2 agriculture district to allow the applicant to divide the existing residents from the remainder of the property, which contains several buildings, including the Pleasant Valley Christian Center, a manufactured home, and agriculture fields. So the remainder of the property will remain zoned AP agriculture, which is about 35 acres. The property lot shape might be irregular and will require approval by the committee, which we've done. this fits in with Eau Claire County's land use map and Pleasant Valley's. Staff concluded and finds that the proposed rezoning request conforms with the comprehensive plan for Eau Claire County. The town board voted 3-0, and the committee, Planning and Development Committee, we held our public hearing and we voted 5-0 in favor.
Thank you. See a request to speak from Supervisor Anderson.
Yes, I understand all the benefits of doing this and how it, of course, fits into the plan and whatnot. My question is there any sort of measurement on how many times we can make this zoning change before it starts to have an accumulative effect on the agriculture zoning, or is it so clearly a small amount that it's not worth, given the statistical evidence?
Supervisor Gibson?
Well, I don't quite understand the total question, but I will say that rezoning requests, if it comes in, if it's approved, if there's any other ordinance or zoning changes in the future, thing has to come back to planning development, has to go through the planning development staff before it even gets to us. And there are several times that rezoning requests are turned down. They never make it to the committee. So there's a whole process after that anyway.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson.
I was going to say, I hope that answered the question.
Not exactly, and I don't have an issue with this particular amendment, or no, not amendment.
Motion.
Motion. Okay. Thank you. My question is, I'll phrase it in a metaphor. Like, if you have a pie and you want to save as much pie as you can, and you take a tiny slice going, it's not going to affect the pie. And we're fine with that because it's true. How many tiny slices of pie, in this case being the agricultural zones, would it take hypothetically to start affecting the amount of agricultural zonings that or A2 zonings that we have, and is that being looked into, or are the slices so small that it's not worth the effort?
I see a request to speak from Supervisor Coffey. Is this in response? Supervisor Coffey?
Sorry, I was muted. So I'd like to send this back to Mr. Esslinger, because it comes back to that whole idea of preserving ag land. And I think that Rod can speak to that better than I can.
I have a chat note that Matt Michaels would like to respond.
Ah, great.
Mr. Michaels.
Thank you, Chair Smeyer. So it's an excellent question, sort of what's the cumulative impact of rezonings in the rural areas. What I can say is that what we use as our guide is the comprehensive plan, which primarily, and the farmland preservation zoning. And so primarily to, make it simple, what we're looking at with each case, we look at each of them on their own merits. And primarily we look at the impact to farmland, and specifically we're looking at productivity of the farmland, the soils. We've classified, there's 8 soil types, classes 1 through 8. It's the NRCS soils. 1, 2, and 3 are considered prime. So what we're trying to do in every single case that you see before you is present a case that we can make an affirmative recommendation that this is not going to adversely impact highly productive soils. Now, is there nominal amounts of farmland that are here and there impacted? Yes, there is. In the totality of the tens of thousands of acres of farmland that we have in the county, statistically, is it a significant percentage? No, it's not. And just as reference, DATCAP, the state agency, basically has a threshold of 20% conversion of farmland for the farmland preservation plan. And I would say we don't come anywhere close. And by that, I mean of the, let's say for argument, 30,000 acres, we might have 50 acres in a given year that would be impacted. So, and by impacted, I mean rezoned. Actual impacts would be much smaller because when someone divides the land, typically they don't build on all the land. And what we're also looking at for our criteria is what is the intentions? We do try to minimize what we call non-farm housing, which means that the folks there are not primarily engaged in agriculture. But yeah, we do see a fair number of these requests. I would say a good portion of them are filtered out, if you will, before they ever reach any decision-making body. By that, I mean, they call me, they used to visit, now they just call or email, and we kind of give them, you know, our educated input on this. And a lot of them, frankly, for lack of a better term, they just go away because we tell them, hey, creating 5 lots in this ag area is not going to be something we could support. And it typically just dies there. And there was a comment made at the last meeting that, hey, why is everything we see before us a recommendation for approval? Does that implicate maybe a rubber stamping on the part of P&D staff? And I would say, no, that's not the case. But what you are seeing is those that have kind of gone through the filter of staff and also gone through a vetting process that includes the town board, their recommendation, the neighbors adjacent to the property, as well as 5 of your colleagues who serve on the planning and development committee. So again, it's really kind of gone through the sausage maker, if you will, by the time it reaches this body. So, you know, by the time you see it, it's typically an affirmative recommendation based on findings of fact. And really, at the end of the day, what we have to say is that we are, you know, balancing the interests of the property owner with the interests of the public, which include things like preserving farmland, as well as allowing people to accommodate some measure of development on their private property. So that's really the, you know, subjective balance that we're trying to maintain.
Thank you, Mr. Michaels. Supervisor Christopherson.
Thank you, Chair Smeyer. Thank you very much, Matt Michaels, for that information. I found it very helpful. But also in addition to that, is there somebody considering not only the farmland impact, but the overall environmental impact of sprawl, wildlife, habitat, forestry, so on and so forth? How is that looked at?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And so in every case, what we do is we will basically, we're fortunate to have a good, robust GIS system. And what that will show us is all our environmentally sensitive areas. And those are defined in Eau Claire County as being areas that are mapped wetlands, floodplains, areas of steep slopes defined as 20, we have 20% plus 30% plus, which basically precludes development. In addition to that, we're looking at things like river corridors, we're looking at significant tree stands, et cetera, et cetera. And what we're doing is trying to figure out on a case-by-case basis whether development whether development is appropriate in the sense of can it be done in a way that basically upholds Titles 17 and 18 of the county code, which relate to land conservation and our zoning ordinance. To the extent that we see larger developments, say a subdivision, then we're looking at more things like conservation subdivision, when we're looking at wildlife corridors, et cetera. So the last case, the one that was just heard, when we look at that wildlife corridor, that would, you know, follow that river corridor or the stream corridor, that would not be impacted by development. So again, our finding would be that the environmental integrity, the ecosystem that exists out there would not be significantly impacted. Although, like I said, it's not an all or nothing. It's not a binary black or white. It's a balance. And the balance that's been chosen by the community is that they want to accommodate some growth in this community. In order to do that, we need to have rules and guidelines and basically a plan, and that plan is what comes to bear basically every time that we review a rezoning petition.
Thank you. I see no other hands raised. Supervisors will now proceed to a vote on file 65. We'll do this by voice vote. Supervisors, please unmute your microphones. All those in favor of file 65, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All those opposed by nay.
Nay.
Okay, we have one nay and apparently 28 ayes. The motion passes. File 66.
Amending the 1982 official zoning district boundary map for the town of Washington.
A motion.
Motion by Bates.
Supervisor Bates, do it by chat, but okay. Motion by Supervisor Bates. Second.
And by Supervisor Gatlin.
Second by Supervisor Gatlin. Thank you. Explanation, Supervisor Gibson. For the last, I hope.
This request is to rezone 5.5 acres from A1 to A2, and this is to divide the existing family residence and outbuildings from the remainder of the property, which is approximately 36 acres, which is primarily agriculture. The remainder of the property will remain in AP. And the remaining of the 17-acre parcel will have legal and physical access through the adjacent parcel, which has frontage to County Highway D. This all fits in with the county plans and the town's plans. Staff has concluded that they have found that the proposed rezoning conforms with the comprehensive plan. The town board, the town of Brunswick voted 4-0 to recommend approval. We held our public hearing at the Planning and Development Committee and voted 5-0 in favor. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Supervisor Christopherson, your hand is still raised. Did you wish to speak? Oh, thank you. Okay. Are there any other questions, any other discussion of file 66? I see none. We'll do this by voice vote also. Please unmute your microphones. All those in favor of file 66, say aye.
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 All those opposed by nay. It is unanimous. Thank you. The next item from the Committee on Finance and Budget, file 67.
This ordinance has amended section of the county code under county code number 4 regarding fees proposed by the Planning and Development Committee.
Thank you. Motion.
Makes the motion.
I'm waiting for a chat motion.
I haven't figured it out yet.
Oh, well, we're going to have some board education here, I think. Okay, we'll accept that. Motion by Supervisor Dunning, second by
Supervisor Jansen.
By Supervisor Jansen, thank you. Explanation, Supervisor Pagonis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief and Supervisor Gibson can weigh in as necessary. This isn't, I'm getting an echo. This is an annual activity where it's primarily planning and development changes its fee structure. It's a constant analysis to have the fees be commensurate with the efforts that are involved. In some cases, the fees have gone up slightly. In some cases, the fees have gone down slightly. So county code requires any fee changes to come before Finance Committee. Finance Committee approved this 5-0. If Supervisor Gibson may have some more specific comments about it, but I think it's pretty self-explanatory and it's basically a housekeeping issue.
Thank you. Supervisor Gatlin.
Yes.
Your hand is raised.
Oh, sorry, nothing.
Not raised. Okay.
This is Supervisor Gibson. I'm going to add to what Supervisor Pagonis said.
Please go ahead.
What we've done in years past is we have requested the Planning and Development Department to monitor how much time and what it costs them for going out in the field and doing all these assessments and everything that's required, which we're charging fees for. So the adjustments have been done based on what they're actually doing to cover the cost.
So the chair assumes that you're speaking in favor of the motion.
I'm adding to what, because Supervisor Pagonis asked me if I had any comments to add to it, that I would do that. So that's what I'm doing.
Thank you. Okay. I see. All right. I see no other hands raised. Supervisors, we will now vote on file 67. Please unmute. All those in favor of file 67, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All those opposed by nay. It is unanimous. Thank you. We take up the next item. The background. This resolution was forwarded to this meeting by a motion to postpone to a time definite. And the basis, the reason for that was a request to answer the question, where would the funds come from to pay for the forensic audit? A supervisor did approach the sheriff. The sheriff has indicated that he will pay for the forensic audit from his own funds, which moves the entire consideration here out of the hands of the board. The sheriff, as a constitutional officer, can do that. He can move the money in his own budget. And that in my estimation, that makes the amended amendment and the motion which the amended amendment amends, both are empty of purpose. So I'm going to prejudice a bit by calling this up and suggesting to the supervisors that we vote down first the amended amendment and then the main motion which it sought to amend, simply to move it off of off the board floor.
Schneider with a question.
Supervisor Schneider.
The forensic audit that he is going to pay for, I understand that's within his authority. The motions and the amendment to the motion was also about a program audit. Is that also something that's within his authority to order?
I'm not sure I can answer that question. Perhaps our corp counsel could answer that question. Tim?
I'm thinking I don't really have an answer. You know, he certainly has the authority for a forensic audit if he's conducting a criminal investigation. The programmatic audit, that's another question. I think that's a decision. You know, how is he even going to do that if he's not an expert in that area?
I'm going to assume that since he has, what's happening?
I'm interrupting, sorry.
No, there's an echo of something. All right, I'm assuming that because the sheriff, as a constitutional officer, can initiate the investigation and now do the forensic audit, that if he estimated that a program audit was necessary for his investigation, that also would fall under his authority.
Mr. Chair, this is Supervisor Pagonis.
Yes.
I'd like to weigh in on that.
Please.
I agree with your position that the sheriff is a constitutional officer and he could proceed in a forensic audit with his own funds, which is what I understand his intention is to do. However, he doesn't necessarily need to use his own funds on a program audit, although he could recommend to the county that one might be a good idea. So it's unlikely, in my estimation, that the sheriff would actually proceed with a programmatic audit. We would expect that if he thinks one needs to occur, he would make that recommendation. I secondly would ask the chair to please clarify his comments. We have the request is to vote down the amended amendment,
Correct.
and then we proceed on a vote to the main motion.
Correct. I'm simply suggesting that because the content of both has been emptied by the sheriff's intention to fund the forensic audit himself. That was the original intention of the main motion, the forensic audit, and the amendment was an attempt to clarify and I think expand that a bit. So my suggestion is to in order to remove it from the board floor, I think it's necessary to vote both of them down. And if the sheriff wished to make some kind of a recommendation or request, that could come through, I assume, your committee.
Then in light of that comment, then I would actually make the motion that we table both the amended amendment and the main motion rather than vote on it.
If we table, the tabling motion has the effect of killing the motion, because when we table something, as I understand it, it has to be taken up again either in the current meeting or the subsequent meeting, or it dies. Is that your intention?
Yes.
Okay.
It's my intention that it dies, which is what I understand is your intention. So.
It is. Okay. So
I will second that motion. Supervisor Bates.
Well, okay. Just to be very clear about this, I made a preliminary comment. We have to bring the file out onto the floor first before we do anything like what Supervisor Pagonis has suggested. So, therefore, Clerk Loomis, file 61.
Authorizing the expenditure of funds to conduct a forensic audit of the finances of the Department of Human Services.
Okay. Now this was forwarded to a time definite. It was active at the time. The question has been answered. Therefore, the chair says the chair will accept motions regarding this at this point. Supervisor Pagonis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Given the comments of the chair that the intent is to, my understanding from my notes is to vote down the amended amendment as well as voting down the main motion for the purposes of killing it, I think it's more expedient that we table the motion at this time with the understanding that the sheriff intends to proceed regardless of the vote, and that if a program audit needs to be done in the future, it would come in as a separate resolution.
Right, and you do understand that your motion, you are moving to table, right?
I am moving to table.
Okay, let's get a second for that.
Yes.
Leary second.
Supervisor Leary on the telephone seconds. Okay, so just a reminder that the motion to table has the effect of killing a motion, which you have acknowledged, Supervisor Pagonis. So,
Question?
Discussion.
Yes, it is up for discussion. I see Supervisor.
I'm sorry, a table is without discussion.
Right, you're right.
Without discussion.
Thank you for the clarification. We will proceed to a vote then on the motion to table. Supervisors, I think we can do this by voice vote. We'll see.
You can't even ask a clarification question on a table?
You could ask for a clarification. That serves the purpose of the Supervisor Snyder.
I don't understand how a table is better than voting something, just voting it down.
It's not the chair's position to question the motion or the maker of the motion. I don't think it's necessary to respond to that, frankly.
Well, if I could, Chair Smyer.
Yes, please.
To motion to table just puts it on the table and it'll stay there indefinitely. And if it doesn't come back within the next meeting and it is not requested to be brought back by the person or the persons who voted to table it, effectively dies.
Thank you. That's my understanding also. I see, thank you for the clarification. I see Supervisor Chilson. You have your hand up? Supervisor Chilson?
I'm here. What capacity is my hand up?
I don't know. Well, if you want to ask a question, I don't know.
Well,
Hand
okay,
is up.
I would. My question is, it's unfortunate that the Eau Claire County Board doesn't have the guts to vote this up or down. So my question is, why don't we have the will to tell people what our position really is? Here we're going to duck for cover and hide. So my question is, why don't we have
Point of order, point of order.
Stop, everyone. Come to order, please.
That's my question.
Thank you. Supervisor Pagonis had a point of order.
Yes, there's a motion to table that has a second is not up for discussion. So I apologize to Supervisor Chilson. I know he would like to do it, but it's too bad. I made the motion to table.
Your
point of order, Mr. Chairman.
I
Supervisor
understand that,
Welty.
Mr. Chair, but I did have a question.
Stop.
Whoa.
Everyone stop. First of all, the chair accepts Pagonis's point of order. Supervisor Wilkie, you had a point of order.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I would suggest to you that this is an attempt to suppress debate and a vote. It is out of order and violation of fair parliamentary procedures. So I would suggest to lay it on the table. It is out of order.
The rule of the chair is not to accept your point of order. I don't think that you are correct. I could be corrected by our expert in Robert's Rules and County Code, our counsel. Tim, do you have any feedback?
I would agree with the chair's assessment.
Okay. We are now going to proceed to vote on the motion to table. Let us
by poll.
I want to do this by poll.
Yeah. Roll call would be better.
Set up a poll. You've got a motion there in front of you. Please vote and do not forget to click on the submit button. Samantha?
I am just waiting on one supervisor's email.
Okay. I'll remind the board that the motion to table requires a simple majority.
I have 22 yeses and 6 nos.
The motion is laid on the table.
Excuse me, 22 yeses and 7 nos, if that makes sense.
Thank you. That is a majority. We have reached the end of our agenda, supervisors. We are now adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Well,